Hello and welcome to a tutorial for protograf. In this tutorial, a two-part series, we are creating a card deck. So just a reminder, when you're working with protograf, you really need three elements. You need a text editor. In this case, I'm using a Linux-based text editor. You need a location where you're going to keep your scripts and your data. And then you need access to the terminal in order to run the Python scripts. So when working with Python, even an empty script won't cause any failure, as you can see here. But to work with protograf, we really need a few basic elements. So these were covered in the introductory tutorial, but we'll just do a quick refresher here. We need this statement at the start of every script from protograf import star that imports all the functionality that we need to create a script. We use the create command that just initializes everything and sets the file up for us. The deck command is needed if we're working with cards, and finally the save command will output the PDF. So if I save that and run it, then indeed we get an output, this forest.pdf file, which we'll look at over here. As you can see, it's just a single page with the number of blank rectangles. These represent cards. They're a standard poker size card, about 6.5 by nearly 9 centimeters in size. The default page is an A4, and all our units will be in centimeters. That's the default. So those can be changed, but for now, for this tutorial, we'll just work with that. So typically the first thing that you're going to want to do is maybe change a few things. In our case, what we want to do is change the output file name that we're saving to, so we can specify what the PDF file is called. We're also going to just tweak the margin a little bit and make it a centimeter from the side. And then for the deck itself, we are going to put some grid marks on, because those can be helpful when people are cutting out your prototype cards. So some grid marks. It'll get displayed around the edge, and we'll make the cards nicely rounded. And similarly, when you save it, you're able to save out images of your cards, but for now we'll just go with this. So let's save that, rerun it. So now we get our cards forest PDF. We won't need this one anymore. We'll just delete that. We have a look at the cards forest. We can see exactly as we requested that we have a rounded card, and we have these small grid marks, these little gray lines around the edge, so that allows someone to do a cutout. And you can see there's a 1 centimeter margin. So our setup is correct. Now typically when we're working with cards, you may already have designed what you want to appear on the cards. So I've done the same. I've created a set of data that I want to display on my cards. So I'm just going to paste it in here now. So this is a card game loosely based around walking in a forest. So the cards have these names, the elements of the cards have these names, a title, classification, value, and image, and so on. You could also work with a spreadsheet. So these would then be columns in a spreadsheet, and all of these numbers 1 to 9 would be rows. But just to make it easier for reference and to make it more visual, we just include it in the script. But yes, typically you'd be working with a spreadsheet. So in order to make use of that data in our deck, we need to provide a link to that to tell protograf we're using that data. So in this case, it's a data list, because these square brackets are, every time you see a square bracket, that's a list element. So there's a data list, and the name there, the forest, corresponds to the name that we've given our list here. So if it was a spreadsheet file, you just say file name, and you'd give it the name of the file in which your data was contained. Otherwise it would work exactly the same. The next thing is to decide what's going to go where, and what our design is going to look like. So I'm just putting in some reminders, some placeholders that tell us what kinds of things we want to put on onto each of our cards. We need a frame. We're going to display some kind of image here. The card has a value, it has a title, a descriptive title. it's classified in some way. Maybe there's a symbol associated with it. We're putting a little kind of little quote, like many cards have little quotes, just to give it a bit of theme. And an ID just helps us keep track of the cards. If there's a problem, someone can refer back to a card number. And finally, an attribution. So this is to tell people where this card came from if it got lost. So at this point, let's just save that and rerun it and see what happens. And the answer is nothing. Nothing has happened because we haven't actually told protograf any more about what we want to do. So let's start off setting up some information for our card. So the first thing we'll do is we'll put up a basic frame to contain things. This is going to contain the action part of our script, so it's going to be in the lower half of a card. So I'll just pause a moment here and just talk about the card element. So a card element really has two parts to it. The first part is what card am I referring to that I want to deal with, and the second part is what do I want to show on that card. So in this case, the card is all. You can also use a star there. This also works as well, but I'm just keeping it all because that's perhaps a bit easier to read. And then the second part is a shape or a number of shapes, in fact, that you want to display. So each shape is defined by its name. You then have these open brackets. You specify some properties. So properties typically are giving you control as to where that shape appears and what it looks like. So in this part of the tutorial, we're only focusing on where things are going to go, and we'll come back to the how later. Come back to the customization of how it looks later. So most shapes will have an X and a Y. So that's at the top left corner. So where it appears in the top left corner of the card. And in this case, it's X's from the left and Y's from the top. So it's about halfway down the card. And the width and the height, if it's a rectangle, that'll specify how big that rectangle is going to appear. So that's enough talking. Let's see what that looks like. And there you have it there. A rectangle of about 5.5 by 3.5 centimeters is now displayed in every single card. The next thing we'll do is we will display a small placeholder, a location for the value of the card. So in this case, we're going to use a circle, and much like the rectangle, a circle has an X and a Y. A circle has a radius rather than a width and the height. So remember, the radius is the distance from the center of the circle to the end. So if the radius is 0.5 centimeter, then the circle has a diameter total size of 1 centimeters. And we now have this extra property called a label. So a label is something that you want to appear on the card, and protograf will insert that label directly over the center. So, and that's a sensible default because a lot of things appear at the center of elements that you show on a page. So let's have a look at that. So there you can see it. Label 1 appears on all the cards. The other kind of element that we typically going to deal with in cards is text or text elements. So a label is a useful way to show a kind of very small amount of text, but if you want longer amounts of text, then typically you want to work with a text shape. So in the same way we have a rectangle and a circle, we have a text, and we have an open and closed brackets. So much like the other ones, there's an X and a Y. That's the top left corner of where that text is going to appear. Like a rectangle, text has a width and a height, and it has an additional property here called text. So text is literally the thing that you want to display. So let's have a look how that comes out. It's giving us an error because we've not closed the brackets. So every time you open a bracket, you need to close it. So the start of the bracket is there at the card, and the end is here after the text. So the text has its own brackets, you can see there, but the card itself also needs brackets. So You will get these errors sometimes, but hopefully Python or Protograf will give you a hint and say, well, you opened a bracket but you never closed it. You may not always be obvious where that error is, but at least you have some indication of what to look for. So save that, rerun it, and there you have it. The title is placed there. So you'll see the title is meant to be 1.5. So the title is all text by default is centered over the position. So sometimes you want to align it and sometimes you want to center it. So the default, just bear in mind, is centered. The other thing that we want to do is put some kind of classification on the card, and here we're using yet another shape. This one is called a stadium, and the stadium is actually easier to show than to describe, so close the brackets on that. And again, the stadium has an X and a Y, a width and a height. A stadium, in fact, is just a somewhat modified rectangle. It's easier just to show you. So there, the stadium is displayed near the bottom at position Y is 8 centimeters down, and centered there. And the stadium is just really a rectangle, but the ends have been rounded. You could also, if you want, round the top and the bottom, but this is a typical kind of display shape used on a card. So you start to get a feel now for how to readily put things onto a card, and how Protograf will take those elements and display them across all the cards that you want. Just to clarify again, the cards are there. If, for example, you only wanted the stadium to appear on a certain number of cards, say we want the last 3, so that's cards, because the cards are numbered starting here, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so cards 7 to 9. So this is a bit like when you issue a command to a printer and you only wanted to print a certain number of pages, you typically give it a print range. So in our case, we're giving it a card range 7 to 9, and if we ran that, we would see that in fact, yes, the stadium symbol now only appears on the last 3 instead of all of those. So you can quickly change which cards you want. This could even be a single card number 7, or you could say card 7 and card 9. So you could comma separate any number of specific cards. You could target as you want. So again, our script simple. We are just targeting all the cards. So this takes us up to a certain point, but now we've got to the point where we'd actually like to see the data that we've created here appearing on the cards, and not just what I would call placeholders. So we don't want label, we want the actual value of the card. So the way to do that is to use a what's called a T command or template command. So in the case of the value, card value, we are going to use, in place of that 1 there, what we're actually going to insert, and just make it a little clearer, is T, which is short for template, open and close brackets. You can see the brackets there, and inside this, like we had a string before with inverted commas, now we're using this double curly bracket syntax. It might not be that obvious, but this is a functionality that's extended in Python, that allows you to replace this thing, which we called value. So instead of now seeing the word value, the program is going to use that as a reference to something called value. So, which in our case is the title of the column in which your data is stored. So remember, I said that these are like column headers, column names that you typically see in a spreadsheet. So in our case, we have one called value, which is the 4th column along. So if you look there, 1, 2, 3, 4. So star would be a value, 3 would be a value, 2 would be value. These can just be numbers, or they can also be strings of text. Okay. So that's what we're wanting to. So instead of 1 now, we should start to see actual information coming through from our data set. So let's have a look at that. And there you have it. That's the star, a little bit tiny. We could zoom in a little bit and just have a look at that. You can see that there's the star that we talked about there. There's the star there. There's the 3 that appears there. There's the 2, and so on and so forth. So that information has been brought through. And in the same way that we've done it for the card value, we could also do it for the card title, and that would look pretty much the same as you would expect. Instead of title there, we are going to use this T command with open brackets inside the string, then the double curly brackets, which you open and close, and then the title. So let's see how that goes. So again, instead of word title, now we're seeing the text that's appearing here, this in the second column, title, shadows, and so on. So the rest of this will go, the rest of the script will look pretty much the same. I'm just going to copy in the lines here for the quote and the ID and the attribution. I'll just show those and rerun it. So we have this this text here, which is for the quote. We have what we haven't got is for the classification, so let's put that one in as well. That's our, remember, that's our stadium, our rounded rectangle, for which we're using a label. So let's run it with the stadium as well. So there you can see biota, minerals, other. There's our quote that appears here, and there's our title. So that's pretty much everything we have, except for the image that we'd like to appear in the card. So a card image, or an image this is typically a PNG, JPEG, GIF file, any kind of format that you would like to use. In our case, what we've done is I have stored images in this image subdirectory. So you can see when I reference it here, I'm referencing image, and woods.png, this is just a little placeholder, not an actual image. So let's just run it with that and see what happens. And it's just this out of the woods sort of scrawled image, but you can see that that's been placed on the card just there in that position, just close to the left edge and just down from the top. And we have, again, like we have for a rectangle, because an image is a rectangular shape, a width and a height. The thing to notice here is that the image appears to be, or the circle for the card value is superimposed, and that's because the card image is drawn first. So the order in which these items will appear in the card is the order that you've specified them here. Protograf will start here, draw the rectangles, draw the image, then will draw the circle. So because the image is drawn before the circle appears to be superimposed on it. So there's something to bear in mind. If it looks like something is not appearing on your card, it could be that the order that you've given it is not correct, in which case you can just cut that piece of the script out and insert it low down in your script, at which point you should see it. So that's really as far as we're getting in this part of the tutorial. In part 2, we'll look more about how to make this look like a visually attractive card that you could give to your playtesters, and hopefully they would be able to make sense of it. So that's all, and thanks for watching.